Welcome to Eventful Endeavors, secrets to crafting the perfect celebration. If you're planning an event and looking for useful tips from industry experts, you're in the right place. So get ready to take some notes and we'll dive right in. This is Eventful Endeavors.
Winery. I know that you've had kind of a long, awesome experience in the events industry before you joined Trentadue back in January, doing weddings and all kinds of different events. And you've told me that Trentadue really feels like coming home. I know you love the family aspect of Trentadue. So super excited to talk to you and talk about events and your venue, your experience, your space. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So let's get right into it. So what are some cool trends that you're seeing in the wedding or event industry?
Yeah, so I would say in the wedding and event industry, we have kind of pivoted to a very more customized approach. I see a lot of weddings, rather than following necessarily trends that they might see on the internet or social media, they are really kind of personalizing the experience, whether that's through little details, whether that's shown in their food, their decor, even down to their menus, their place cards, things like that. I really see the wedding trend, specifically at Trentadue, really kind of focus more on the personalization side of things rather than kind of the trends that are shown online. And I see that kind of across like other areas as well. But yeah.
Are there any recent things like personalization things that you've seen that like really stood out?
Yeah, we did an amazing wedding back in June, and they were a part of an amazing vintage car community. And so they, had an old car that they had kind of parked on a walkway within our property, and it was overflowing with flowers from the front. They added a lot of fun, car customization into their special day. They had little vintage car tags that had kind of a cute little quote about love and their initials and things like that. The groom actually arrived on a extremely old vintage car. He actually processed to the arbor via vintage car, which is something that we at Trentadue had never seen before. So, we were all about, they were presenting these super, out of the box fun ideas, and we just were all for it. Yeah.
That's awesome. Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that area of California is pretty big on their vintage cars.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, this couple also wasn't from the area in which we live. They were actually coming from Los Angeles. I noticed that Trentadue was kind
Oh,
of very much like that. I would say, do a lot of local weddings, a lot of Bay Area local weddings, couples, but we are definitely a location for everyone. Los Angeles, even down to, we just did a wonderful wedding last weekend for a couple out of Scottsdale, Arizona. So, we are definitely kind of becoming more of a hub to, folks that don't live near us, which is really exciting.
yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. You're kind of hitting all the big hubs, Scottsdale, LA.
Yep. We have some people from Florida coming in, Maine, Pennsylvania, which I hadn't really seen before. I think that being a wine country destination, we get a lot of people from the Bay Area. Maybe the couple, is in tech or lives in San Francisco, but their family might not be local. So they're kind of traveling in. But now we see a lot of couples that aren't local to the area too, which is, yeah, really interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so speaking of couples, what are some things that couples or just people at events in general should never do? What's the like biggest cringiest thing that you're like, this I can't stand when they do this? Tell all.
No, if it's just one thing, I feel like we
Oh,
are, like I said in the beginning, we're kind of in of what everyone is doing online kind of trend, right? We see things on TikTok or Instagram or even Pinterest. And I feel like, we are kind of in an age where, they really want to kind of be what they see online. And then sometimes it can come off not in the most authentic way to them. So, even, being a wedding planner for so many years, I'm all about like authenticity and being yourself and really, feeling and choosing things that feel right to you. And I definitely feel like that is something that you can kind of feel when it's more not necessarily about the couple and their interests, but more about wanting to kind of fit into the social media side of things.
absolutely. Is there anything
Yeah.
that you've seen at events in general that is something that is just like cringeworthy or you like hate to see?
I don't know if it's anything that I hate to see. I
You're so
feel
nice.
no, but I can't really think. Let me think. Let me think a little bit harder. I really,
One of my last guests shared that
yeah, give me an
their
example.
least favorite thing. Well, I feel like this is a very unique example because I was very surprised that they brought this up. They brought up that they hate that Sweet Caroline is designated as the party song. And they're just like, it's a bad song. We don't like it. And they went on and on and on about that. So that's like a funny example. I mean, I've heard a lot from other people also about like timing and not being prepared for things or trying to go too big and then, not having day of planners or not having people like ready to make the things that they want happen. So it's just kind of
Uh-huh.
like a rush in the end and then people end up being stressed through events. Those are kind of common things that I hear.
Yeah. I mean, I think
No?
so. We require planners, we require coordinators on property. So we, try to limit the amount of kind of those like last minute things. We really try to not be a DIY venue. I feel like a lot of times, there's people who feel like they could do a lot of the things themselves, but I think it's really easy to feel like you can until you're put in the situation. And I really think that there are so many wonderful event professionals out there that you are always going to find someone within your price point. I feel like there's always going to be a vendor that is the right fit for someone. So we don't do a lot of DIYs on property. We don't really have a lot of, events that don't have a coordinator or a planner just because, they handle so much of things, the logistical side of things that we can't really, not have them a part of the experience. I would say I'm very happy that we are moving away from the cha-cha slide or the YMCA or kind of all of those. I also love that we kind of have gotten away from the garter and mostly the garter tossed. I feel like those experiences were always kind of like, oh, Magic Mike's playing. Like, what's going to happen next? But I mean, it is a luxury being the venue side of things because we are really just making sure, that the venue is operating and everything is running smoothly. And we don't necessarily monitor or, truly like we're not knee deep in all of the other logistical things. So as long as the venue's there, as long as it's beautiful, the spaces are, everything that the couple wished for and more, then all of the other little things, are more about their specific taste and less about.
Yeah, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Other than the car thing that happened recently,
Yeah.
what is the coolest thing that you've seen? Is there a second coolest? Is that the coolest? What is like the coolest vendor or like way that they plan an event? What is the number one thing that you've seen? And that doesn't have to be at Trentadue either.
Yeah. I feel like there's so many fun trends out there. I really feel like even, everything from the beer burros to, we have this season, later in the year in October, the bride's mom owns a carriage company. And so she's arriving on a horse-drawn carriage. Those are some things we don't see very often. In the wedding world, I feel like music has become such a large part of the experience, right? I feel like we went from having a lot of DJs to now being a little bit more band heavy, weaving music in really throughout the whole experience, whether it used to be pre-recorded for ceremonies and now there's a live violinist or a stringist or even live music during cocktail hour. I feel like very recently, the last 2 or 3 years has shifted towards live musicians. So I feel like we are definitely weaving in music and entertainment a lot more now than we were even a couple years ago. I would say that has been a trend. A lot of couples are actually leaning away from the plated and family style and kind of going back to stations or even buffet. That's something new that we've kind of seen the pendulum swing back to. So I would say definitely like entertainment and cuisine. I feel like we've definitely this year gotten a lot more requests to kind of think outside the box when it comes to food, whether it's even through we had a lovely couple that lived in Hawaii as well, and they had a pig station, or even down to, a lot more authentic choices in desserts. Yeah, so I just feel like entertainment and food and beverages have definitely been something that we see, and from a planner perspective, see really kind of intertwined in the entire experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that we've seen too. I mean,
Yeah.
it seems like everything you're saying, people are shifting a lot towards, personalized, more
Mhm.
catered to them experiences. We're kind of ditching the old traditional things in favor of a more casual and guest focused experience rather than, well, these are all the things that we have to do. The amount of times that I've had talked to clients recently for weddings specifically that have said, well, you know what? We're not doing any of the things, any of the wedding stuff. We're not doing any of that. We want you to come. We want to have a huge party and we're going to have food and drinks and that's it. There's no dances. There's no special little moments. We're just going to party. Like they have
Yeah.
ditched all of those like weird, not weird, but older trend traditional moments that, kind of you're mentioning. So yeah, I've seen that a lot too. And the live music and aspect of entertaining the guests has
Mhm.
seems like it's becoming a lot more popular. So, yeah. Is
Yeah.
there anything in particular that makes your venue or service unique?
Yeah, I feel like there's lots of things about Trentadue that kind of do stand us apart from other venues. Specifically, we are still owned and operated by the Trentadue family today, which I think is very nice. I think sometimes, we can be in a wedding world where things do feel transactional, right? You could feel like you are one of many rather than one of one. And I think that being a family owned and operated business has really caused us to kind of rethink that approach and really want our couples to feel very special, to feel a part of the family. And I think that there's many ways in which we do that. I think that, we are not a winery that has been picked up by a large corporation. We have gone through the ebbs and flows of the wine industry and the wine world, for 60 years at this point. So I think, being and allowing our couples to feel a part of the Trentadue family is really something, I am really all about how couples feel. I really want couples to feel special, to feel taken care of. And I think that's something, being a wedding planner in my past, I have had couples who have worked at venues where it has felt very transactional, right? Where it just has felt like, okay, well, I'm having a wedding today, but I know that they're having 3 other weddings this week, right? But at Trentadue, I think because we're a family owned operated, we are a small internal team. There are only 7 or 8 of us on the management side of things that really kind of are the back of Trentadue Winery and what it stands for. And I think our inclusions really help us stand apart from others. There are loads of items that are included in our venue fee and at our venue that I think a lot of couples appreciate and want to maybe book with us because they know that they don't have to do the extra legwork. They don't have to go and source things themselves. They don't have to a lot of not the work because weddings are work, but they don't have to go out and source a bunch of the items that we have. We have loads of venue locations at Trentadue, which make it very special as well. There are 5 different venue locations. Our couples have access to all of them. We only take 1 event a day. So we're not the place where we're going to have, 2 weddings happening at the same time. And I would say, one of the main things that make Trentadue as special as it is definitely our grape arbor. Our grape arbor is a reception location on property where couples actually dine and sit under a true canopy of vines and grapes, which, feels very ceremonious. There is something very special about dining under wine in wine country, which feels very special. So I think that there's loads of items, that allow and have Trentadue stand out from, other areas that might be near.
Yeah, you mentioned a bunch of your inclusions, and I'm just curious, like, what those things are. I'm super intrigued by what you guys include.
Yeah, so we have many kind of inclusions that our couples are able to use or not use at the same time. So we have a wonderful internal inventory that our couples have complete access to. And those are going to be 2 types of chairs, all of the banquet tables they would need. So whether they're rounds, rectangular, queens, 8-foot, 6-foot, all of those items are included. We have great bar options on property. So we even have, like high boys, low boys. We really have everything at Trentadue, really besides everything that gets laundered or sanitized. So like glassware, flatware, linens, things like that typically come from an outside source. But we have a wonderful inventory that saves, our couples, hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. And our internal team sets all of that up for them as well, which is really nice, right? So they have access to our inventory, whatever they choose to use from it. We will be in charge of essentially setting and striking those items. So they don't need to bring in additional rentals. They don't have to worry about paying the additional fees to set items up because our pricing is all inclusive of that. And also what our pricing is also inclusive of is taxes, service charges, administrative fees. We give our couples a set price. That way, when they walk out the door, they're not, telling how many chairs they would need, or wondering how much our service fee is going to be, or if they're from out of state, like wondering what the California tax is going to be, or things like that. So I think we really kind of stop shop. That alleviates a lot of the stress and kind of financial strain that weddings can cause for our couples.
Yeah. That's really interesting. That's actually fairly aligned, interestingly enough, and we can talk about this another time, but it's fairly aligned with how we do things. We also include a lot of things in kind of, it's one price, we don't charge taxes. Like a lot of the things that you said are very similar to how we do our events as well. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
In terms
I
of
think that there's
your,
nothing. Go ahead.
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think that weddings are very expensive. And I think that to be able to allow our couples to feel that they can come from abroad, they can live in a different state, and we are going to do a bulk of kind of the rentals and the inclusions for them, it really allows them to be like, oh, I can actually be in the planning experience. I can actually enjoy it because I know that there's not a hidden fee that is going to come my way, at any
Totally.
point. And it's really nice to be transparent up front, because I think we don't ever want to be like the gotcha, right? Like we don't want you to fall in love with our venue and then be like, oh, gotcha. Now here is a long list of additional fees that weren't originally disclosed to you. So
Yeah, totally. I mean, and I don't know, I could be going down a bad path here by saying this. I feel like a lot of venues, not a lot. I've heard of venues that will do all the things and then say, oh, but you can only use, these 5 vendors for anything. And I feel like
yeah.
that turns into a gotcha for a lot of clients. On our front, we don't typically have too big of an issue with that because we do so many events. We can work with any venue and have the insurance and all this stuff to get most. We've never had a venue say no, but I do hear from clients like, oh, well, we can only use one vendor for this and one vendor for that, and it has to come off their
Mhm.
list. So I don't know if you guys do that, but I see that, as the gotcha kind of thing where I've heard that from other venues. So
Yeah. So we do have a preferred vendor list. They are no means, I mean, we kind of have 2 preferred vendor lists. We have a vendor list, really it's just catering, but we have a catering list that we really highly request and urge our couples to choose from. 1, because we know and love them. And 2, we know because we have all of the big items that a lot of the other logistical things are going to come from the catering side. And, because there is maybe there's a weekend where we do have back-to-back events. So we do need, a catering partnership where, they're clean and they're cleanly and, they're aware that, we don't have the capacity to come and hire, a professional cleaning company to come in at midnight when they all depart. But on the other vendor side of things, we love and welcome any relationship that comes through our doors. So, again, it kind of comes back to the wedding planning side of things. I know that there is a vendor that feels right for everybody. And I am never going to be the venue manager, and we are never going to be the venue where we're going to say, actually, no, that might feel really right to you, but that doesn't logistically work with us, right? We, again, really want our couples to feel like a family. We really want them to feel like they are having a wedding that feels true to who they are. So we're never going to, tell people that they can't work with the vendors that they feel like can achieve their vision. Now, they do have to be licensed. They do have to be insured. They do have to be a reputable vendor in the area. But, we welcome all of kind of the vendors that's, step through
yeah.
our doors. So
And to what you were bringing up, I said there's the vendor list thing, and sometimes people get caught with that. But I feel like those are extreme situations where it's like, well, we only have 5 vendors. Good luck.
yeah.
Because I've also heard the exact opposite where, you know, people bring in their own vendors. And I mean, we even deal with this kind of fairly frequently where we have to have these conversations where people want to work with so and so that's their cousin's best friend's dad, and he's not really a real company, and they say that he is and that he's like huge and all these, he's got all these things, but then you come to find out on the event day this person doesn't really do that job, and that can provide a lot of issues too. So I do understand both sides of that flip coin of like why vendor lists exist, but also, sometimes I see vendor lists that are like, we have 5 people, so
Yeah.
I
And
do
I mean, I
understand
think
the reason to check.
Yeah. And I think, there are some vendors where they can come in and maybe it's a friend of a friend and they do a great job, right? But there's some vendors where, and that has a lot to do with like, entertainment side of things, right? Like, do they have the proper backline? Do they have the audio support? Do they know what ampage they need? Things like that. But, for vendors where maybe it's like florals, we're a little bit more lenient on the floral side of things. But, there are some vendors where they do, we need them to be real, licensed, and it's people.
Uh,
Yeah.
so, what is your current availability? How far in advance do you book? What's the kind of guest counts in your space, and how's that all work?
Yeah. So we book really about 15 to 18 months in advance. So we're basically completely booked for 2027, really the months through May through October. And that has a lot to do with how our venue changes throughout the year, right? There's some parts of our venue that are more, more in bloom maybe in May, even April. And then, there's some things that are more, couples are more drawn to in the later months, August through October. But all of our couples really book about 15 to 18 months in advance. We already have contracts for August or September of 2028. So, we sweet spot is typically for Fridays and Sundays, couples book around like 8 to 12 months. Saturdays, typically it's like even 15 to 24 months out.
Wow, that is amazing. Cool. What are the guest count ranges that you see?
Yeah, so our max capacity is 265. It is a rarity that we host that many guests on property. I would say pre-COVID, we were really into the large, super large celebrations, and now I think we kind of transitioned to smaller celebrations. So I would say on our property, we see guest counts ranging from about 50 to 175. I would say we have like maybe 2 or 3 events that are in the 200 range. But I think that has a lot to do with whether it's a different cultural celebration or a multi-day celebration or kind of things like that. But I would say 50 to 175 is our sweet spot.
Cool. Yeah, that's a perfect size in my opinion for like events. That's a great size.
Yeah.
If you're comfortable sharing, what is the average cost at your venue for those kind of things and deposit and cancellation and all of that?
Yeah, so we have our pricing changes throughout the year, and it also depends on the day of the week. So we have Saturday pricing, May through October. Our Saturday pricing is at 14,000, and that is inclusive of all of our spaces, taxes, service charges, administrative fees, our entire inventory. And then pricing during peak season for Fridays and Sundays is 11,000. That comes with the same inclusions. And then we do offer, midweek pricing, which is like 8 to 9,000. It also depends on whether it's a corporate group versus a wedding. And then off season, our Saturday pricing is 11,000, comes with the same inclusions. Friday and Sunday pricing is 9,000, comes with the same inclusions. So we are about, in the $9,000 to $14,000 range, but that is for a standard 5 to 10 event timing. Now we do have the ability to add on time in the front because we can't go later due to our noise ordinance. So we allow our couples to actually purchase out our tasting room or do what we call a tasting room buyout, which allows us to essentially close the tasting room from the public and then allow our wedding couples to begin their celebration a little bit earlier. And that's an additional 2,500.
Oh, very cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I know that you said you got multiple spaces, so I'm sure you're probably backed up in case there's rain or anything like that for that kind of situation.
Yes. So we do have an indoor area. It's called our indoor pavilion. Renovations coming to that soon. So if you see anything online, just know, we are in kind of renovating that space entirely. But we have an indoor area. And then we also have a great relationship with a neighborhood winery. Again, being a family owned and operated winery, being, an establishment for so long, our owners have great relationships with the wineries around us. So we have a partnership with a winery that is 2 doors down called Trio, and they have a beautiful indoor cellar. And so if there's ever rain on our forecast and maybe our couples are not wanting to rent a tent or kind of do anything like that, we often actually lean on them to have ceremonies at their locations. And then we do the receptions in Trentadue in the indoor pavilion. You can rent a
Oh,
tent. They just tend to be a little bit expensive. So we kind of created an alternative route for our guests.
that's cool.
Yeah.
Is that indoor pavilion, does that have the same 10 p.m. curfew?
Yes. Yeah. And that's
Okay.
our countywide noise ordinance. So we really, in our county, we cannot go later past 10 unless it's tied to lodging of some kind. If it's tied to
Oh, really?
lodging, typically, yeah. So like hotels, resorts, you often can do like an after party or you can stay a little bit later. And it has a lot to do with like the wildlife around us, right? It has a lot to do, with we want to kind of make sure that, we are allowing all of the animals around us to also have a life at night.
Sleep.
Yeah. Or feel comfortable with being awake. Owls, for example, right? Owls are a large part of, the habitats around us. So, we try to, last song at 9:57, as we say.
I love it.
Yeah.
So I know that you mentioned that you guys require planners and all those things. Is
Mhm.
there an event coordinator or manager on site for the day of the event? Is that you? Is it someone else? Is it someone
Yeah.
that comes in?
Yes, so it's myself. So typically, the best way that I can describe it to couples is I work the morning shift. I'm the bad guy. So I am checking vendor load in, checking vendor load out, making sure that they're arriving on time, making sure that they are coming at the proper time in which they told us they would be there. And then I have a lovely assistant. She is fantastic and she works the evening shift. So I come in the morning, I stay through ceremony. And then once we get down the aisle and we know that everything's kind of everything's running very smoothly, then I depart and then she stays throughout the duration. So there's always someone from the event side of things on property. And then we also have a handyman that stays on property. So he, is making sure that the lights are staying on, that everything is that the sprinklers are turned off, doing all of kind of his side of things. So yeah, we're
Cool.
never going to have a stranger there.
That's always great to hear, even from a vendor side. Love to hear that. So, just a couple other things to talk about. I know that you mentioned that your family history is really interesting and could be a
Mhm.
fun topic to chat through on the podcast.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you
Yeah.
wanted to share on the Trentadue family history?
Yeah, so I am not a Trentadue family, right? So these are all just kind of stories that I've heard, throughout the year. But Leo Trentadue has a memoir. You're able to kind of purchase it online or within our tasting room, which gives a very in depth, wonderful kind of history about the Trentadue name. But I have been told that the Trentadue name, also known as Trentadue in Italian, so Trentadue is 32 in Italian, and supposedly back in the 13th century, there were 32 families that migrated from Africa or Egypt or someplace and actually migrated to Italy together. So 32 families, they were known as the Trentadues, and so Trentadues. And so that is supposedly how the Trentadue name has, kind of come to fruition, starting as, early as the 13th century. But yeah, we're owned and operated by that family still today. Our CEO is the owner's daughter. Our tasting room manager is the other owner's son. So the Trentadue family, is still very ingrained in who we are. But yeah, wonderful history of our family, even down to Leo Trentadue. He founded our property, fell in love with the wine family, which was Evelyn, his wife. So he didn't actually start with the love of wine. It is something that kind of started as a hobby to him and has turned into a wonderful business endeavor and something that we are still, managing and kind of keeping alive still to this day.
That's awesome. I love that. And then I know that you had a special offer for the podcast. Do you want to share about that?
Yes. So for anyone that is listening in or watching online, we are happy to extend an additional discount to all of the lovely folks who are listening in. So all our folks have to do is just email info@trentadue.com and let them know that they listen to the podcast. And we would love to extend an additional 40% off all wine orders and $10 flat shipping to anywhere in the United States where wine can be mailed to, because believe it or not, it is not everywhere. So make sure that you know if you are based in a state where wine cannot be shipped to you, then, mail it to a
Awesome.
friend.
Yeah, that's a really
Yeah.
awesome and generous discount. People should take
Yeah.
advantage of that. That's cool.
Yeah, and join
Um,
our wine club. We have wonderful wine. We have a wonderful wine club. It's operated by our tasting room manager. Great discounts throughout the year. Sales. We have internal sales that go on to our tasting room members all year long. So yeah, join our wine club, and we would love to see you guys out.
what kind of wine do you guys make mostly?
Yeah, so we make a lot of red wines. I would say that our winemakers really have a great niche in the red wine category. So we make great Merlots, we make a great Sangiovese. We actually make wonderful white wines as well. We have a great Chardonnay variety, Sauv Blanc. We make a great Malbec. I would say the only wine that we don't really create is a Pinot Noir on property.
Hmm.
Yeah.
While you were saying that, I was like, I should look and open it up. You guys make some ports.
We
That's
do
super
make
cool.
ports. Yes, and we make a
Yeah.
chocolate port, which is really, really different. And I don't know anyone else that makes a chocolate port. It kind of tastes like a little bit like a Tootsie Roll. It goes great over vanilla ice cream. But yeah.
I'm going to have to get this discount code.
Please. Please.
Well, thank you so much. This was so much fun chatting with you. I really appreciate it. Book your weddings at Trentadue, and thank you for chatting through all the details.
Oh, yes, Jake. Thank you so much for having us. And yeah, thanks again.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Eventful Endeavors, Secrets to Crafting the Perfect Celebration. We hope to have left you with some actionable ideas for your own event. If you like the show, please subscribe and definitely leave us a review. We read every comment. So until next time, happy planning and see you soon on Eventful Endeavors.